The year is 1971 and you're looking to procure a new automobile for your family. You're also a Ford lover and want to go down to the Blue Ovals dealership to pick out a new vehicle for your family. There's a lot new at Ford for 1971. More specifically, Ford introduced the subcompact Pinto this year. They also refreshed the Mustang into a larger and heavier vehicle, which actually I think is rather attractive. And you could also pick up a Maverick if that was your choice, including a new four-door Maverick sedan. However, your family is growing and you feel that you really need a full-size Ford to accommodate it. In this case, you're in luck, as 1971 was the year that Ford decided to refresh its full-size vehicles that were introduced for the 1969 model year. Changes were considerable for 1971 and included things like flush-mounted door handles, something that, by the way, would go away in 1973 a few years later, new bird beak-style grills up front, new bumpers, full-width tail lights out back if you got the LTD, a new roof, and even concealed windshield wipers, as well as ventless curved side glass. The 71 Fords were also designed to be safer than their predecessors and now featured new steel guardrails included in the doors. These were a feature that Ford was so proud of that a number of advertising campaigns were built off them, with Rod Serling talking about the virtues of having such safety features in the cars. There were also new features under hood, where a 400 cubic inch V8 engine was now available, and it would soon replace a 390 cubic inch V8 that Ford had employed under the hood of its full-size cars for many years. Interior designers also were not going to be outdone, as if you ordered one of these 1971 Fords, you got an all-new interior with new instrument panel and gauges, and if you got the top trim level LTD Brougham, these beautiful brocade high-back seats that you could get in either a bench style or in twin comfort lounge style where the bench was split. There were 4 full-size Fords offered for 1971, including the Custom 500 at the bottom end, the Galaxy 500, the LTD, and finally the LTD Brougham, which was the top-of-the-line full-size Ford that you could buy. Unfortunately, however, the Fastback style XL was discontinued for the 1971 model year, so buyers would have to live with notchback styling on the coupes as well as the four-doors, although you still could get 2- and 4-door hardtops, as well as sedans in the latter body configuration, and of course there was the Country Squire wagon. Overall, 1971 would prove to be an extremely successful year for Ford, with 917,856 full-size Fords sold. Yes, that's right, almost 1 million full-size Fords were sold for the 1971 model year, which was a gain of about 8% on a year-over-year basis. Ford led the industry in this full-size segment for 1971, in part helped by a strike against General Motors plants that occurred in 1970. As a result, Chevrolet only sold 765,000 full-size Caprices, Impalas, Bel Airs, as well as wagons in that model year. As 1971 soldiered on into 1972, there were a number of minor changes that took place on these full-size Fords. More specifically, the grille treatments were different. Most notably, though, was the tail panel treatment, where on the LTDs, the full-width tail light was now gone. And I think that was probably the most unfortunate evolution in the styling for 72. While that full-width tail lamp was gone, customers actually benefited because, recall, this was a time during the Nixon administration where price and wage controls were in place. And so the 1972 Fords were actually priced at an almost identical price point to the 1971 models, although they did come standard with some more equipment. There also was a repeal of federal excise taxes on new cars, so if you bought a new car in 1972, you actually got a bit better deal than 1971. And although the rear ends are dead giveaways to signify if a car is a 71 or 72 Ford, the other way that you can tell what model year these vehicles are is by taking a look at the front bumper. If it's got that brace across the bird beak style grille, it's a 1972 model compared to a 1971 where that brace did not exist on the bumper. 1972 also brought some changes under hood as the engine options now were reduced to a 351 cubic inch V8, a 400 cubic inch V8, and a 429 cubic inch V8. And that latter 429 cubic inch V8 was making just 208 net horsepower. 1972 would represent the first year where auto manufacturers all published their horsepower in terms of net horsepower, which meant that the engine was rated with all of its accessories, exhaust, air cleaner outfitted, whereas in previous years, the engines were rated absent those. And while the 1971 Fords were certainly attractive vehicles, let's take a look at some of the design proposals for these 71 Fords, because there are a number of differences from the production models. Let's first take a look at this four-door hardtop for the 71 Ford. Not quite clear what model that this was for, but presumably it wasn't for the top-of-the-line LTD because it would have some lower body side trim, although it does have the nice turbine vane wheel covers, which would eventually make it through to production. One major difference between this 1971 proposal and the production model are the door handles. Notice here that the typical push-button type as opposed to the flush door handles that you would see on the 1971 and 72 models. Another difference is that it appears that there's a feature line on this 1971 Ford that runs the entire length of the vehicle. It doesn't break at the midpoint of the car, and on the production models, this feature line did not run the full length of the car. In fact, on the four-door hardtops, it basically faded out at the front door handle and then started again on the rear door. So the designers obviously changed that, and this is more aligned with, I would say, the feature line of the 1968 LTD that ran all the way front to back on the vehicle. The last detail that I can definitely notice is that the front side marker light, you can see there is on the lower portion of the body side ahead of the front wheel. This is in a significantly lower position than where it would be on the final production car. Not quite sure if I like this better or less than the production vehicle, but I think both were handsome. However, here's the real loss, I think, to the Ford lineup for 1971, is that they dropped an XL-style Fastback. But there was a design proposal for a 1971 XL Fastback, which you can see here. Notice that the feature line I was mentioning, which ran the length of the car in the previous photo, does fade out here on the door and then comes back into play at the rear section of the door and gets progressively larger before it fades out again at the rear of the vehicle. Also, check out this cool belt line that has this beautiful upswept profile at the rear of the car. I think that overall, if this had been the 1971 XL, it would have really been a home run. I think this car looks absolutely stellar. I love the way that feature line gets really heavy, then fades out and gets heavy again. And I do like the roofline on this that appears very thin at the front of the vehicle, presumably because the windshield and the A-pillars are being shared with the four-door version, and then gets progressively chunkier as it moves rearward on the vehicle. I think that this would have been a home run if Ford had kept it in 1971, but alas, they did not. The only thing that really strikes me as looking a bit strange is that the wheelbase doesn't look wide enough for this, and that was just something that was characteristic of Ford design during the time. Take a look at this Lincoln Mark IV, for instance, and even a Mark V, where Ford just had something for having equal length front and rear overhangs and making them large on their vehicles. And I think it made them look a bit strange, but I will say that if this proposal had been in the showroom for 1971, I think it would have been a strong sales contender. What do you think? Would you have bought something that looked like this in 1971? Be sure to put a comment in the comment section. In any case, hope you enjoyed this spotlight on the 71 Fords and what some design proposals might have been. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and check out the video thumbnails at bottom left and right for some suggestions for you. Thanks again for watching.